All right, you're very welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. We're on RT.ie, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Lots to talk about on the domestic and international front with Hamer Halgrimsson's Ireland back in action this week against Finland and England. So we'll build up to that and react to yesterday's FAI Cup final, as well as Shamrock Rovers TNS, and build up to the LOI promotion relegation playoff. So to do that, I'm in the company of former Ireland, St Pat's and Drogheda winger Keith Treacy, former Shamrock Rovers and St Pat's goalkeeper Barry Murphy, and Louth-based journalist Barry Landy. I hope you're all keeping well. I presume a little bit of housekeeping to do first, though. We've two Barrys, so I'm going to be you're not in trouble, but I'm going to be using your full names. I think is probably the easiest thing for just for argument's sake. But anyway, look, we're going to start with the.
Can I just say you never introduced me as an ex-Drogheda winger before?
Well, yeah, well, I think I have. No, I think I have. I might have done it once. I think I did it once.
Fair enough. All right.
Fair enough. Yeah. Anyway, look, the FAI Cup final, Drogheda United, champions for the second time, 2-0 winners over Derry City in the decider. Andrew Quinn scoring a header just before half-time, and then Douglas James Taylor with a penalty. Let's get the sense of what it sounded like at the full-time whistle, and also we'll hear from Elicha Ahui, who got the player of the match, and also Ryan Brennan, who, as a hometown hero, was really enjoying the occasion as well. All speaking to Tony O'Donoghue.
And that is it. It is all over. In this all-or-nothing 7-day period, Drogheda United deliver big. Just a second FAI Cup success in the club's history.
I think because everyone thought we were underdogs, so the pressure wasn't really on us. So we could just fight. The pressure was more on them, and we just kept doing what we have been doing since like July, and just try to keep winning. Yeah.
Super overall team performance, as you say, but your performance in particular, you were up against Michael Duffy, probably the best winger in this league, and you had him in your pocket.
Yeah, well, I was just doing my best to try to keep him quiet the whole game. He did me a couple of times, but most of the game I had him in my pocket, as you said.
I don't know what to say, Tony. Dreamland. Trust you. We were up against it for large periods. Scored that clinical moment in the game. Get us to the half was the 5 or 6 minutes towards the end of half time. Just massive for this town, for the lads. We had the bollock and bite, and we got there in the end under a brilliant Derry side that just pushed us right to the end, and it shows the characters and the warriors we have in that dressing room. We said all along, we don't fear anyone. We've got big hearts, and we're lucky to come out the other side. That was just fantastic moment, fantastic.
That is Ryan Brennan there, last voice you heard, and as he said, fantastic moment for Drogheda. I suppose Barry Landy, if you want to sum up the entire day for us in terms of the build up and everything, because it was a huge day for Drogheda in the sense they hadn't had this kind of day out for many years, and I suppose the time when they were winning trophies, that was a long time ago. So just even the build up, the occasion, and the aftermath as well.
Yeah, look, Raf, there's been a lot of water under the bridge, I think, for Drogheda United since 2005 when they first won the FAI Cup, and in 11 years since 2013 when they were last in the final. As Ryan Brennan said there in his interview, like, it's a massive day for the town of Drogheda to get to an FAI Cup final, especially given the season they've had. It's been a season of two halves, if you want to call it that. Real struggle in the first half of the season, and then just an extraordinary run both in the league and the cup in the second half. I don't think anyone saw it coming. The amount of fans that they took to the Aviva yesterday was extraordinary, on the trains, on the buses. Everyone was just so excited for their day. And I know the word underdog has been used quite a lot by a lot of people, but the sense I got from people associated with the club and supporters and spectators yesterday was that Drogheda had a real chance, just given the state of Derry City at the moment, and given the kind of momentum that's behind Drogheda at the minute as well. There was a real sense that there was something there for Drogheda today, or yesterday I should say, and it was all just about capitalising on that, and they were able to do so. Thought the fans were excellent. The famous 45 ultras behind the goal at the Havelock Square ends made a great display before the game, and they were noisy throughout, and I think they spurred the team on. I think, having spoken to a lot of the lads in the team over the last few months, they are very conscious and very aware that the atmosphere that's provided every second week at United Park and then at away games and occasions like this really do make a difference, and you could see what it meant to the town, I think, as well. And I was in Drogheda last night for the homecoming, and it was just a very, very special occasion. As you say, it's not something that comes along too often. Drogheda have been on a real journey the last few years from First Division, still a part-time outfit, moving towards full-time. It's the culmination of a lot of work, and an FAI Cup win and European qualification as well, don't forget, is just incredibly special, and I think richly deserved, especially for Kevin Doherty and Darragh Doyle, who've just put so much into it. And yeah, it's a great day for the town.
Yeah, I suppose Keith as well, as you clarified already, as a former player, I probably haven't mentioned it enough in the intros here, but what's your kind of sense of it, sort of knowing the club as you do?
Yeah, I would echo everything that Barry has just said there. It's absolutely massive. And I think I played for a very short period for Drogheda, probably back in 2015, in around there. Don't quote me on that. It was in around that time, and it just felt like they were always flirting with relegation. They were always going to be there or thereabouts. And even now, you fast forward to now, they're still in the same boat. But to go and win the FAI Cup, when look, I didn't give them much of a chance. I thought on a big Aviva pitch, the likes of Michael Duffy, one or two others would be able to just run rampant, and they weren't. Ahui was absolutely excellent. It's brilliant in hindsight. You can look and say, wasn't Kevin Doherty's tactics absolutely spot on to play the 5 and the 3 and the 2? When you look at that on paper before the game, you'd be thinking, do you really want to isolate Michael Duffy 1v1 with Ahui? That's such a big shout to go on and do it. It's brilliant to be this side of it and go, yeah, just leave him 1v1. That's okay. You would beforehand be thinking, that's not great. But there was big moments in the game. Diallo had a chance when he had a little 1-2 with Patrick McElhenney when he gave it back to him. Diallo should do an awful lot better. Just hit it straight at the goalkeeper. And 6 minutes later, Shane Farrell whips in that cross. And I'm not sure what Connolly is doing at the back stick. He completely switches off. And Quinn is able to run around and it's a wonderful finish from him. But Connolly will be, he'll be seeing that in his sleep last night when he closes his eyes, because he's a wonderful defender. I've played against him. He's such a tough man to get the better of, but that was just all too easy. I don't know whether he knows Quinn is there or not, because he just seems surprised when Quinn comes in and gets the ball. But there just seem to be big moments that Derry come out the wrong side of time and time again. The 1v1 battle, as I said, with Duffy and Ahui, they came out the wrong side. Connolly, from set pieces, Derry didn't look comfortable whatsoever when balls were put into the box. So, yeah, brilliant. It's excellent stuff from Drogheda. But if you're Derry, you must be thinking they had their hands on the league at one point. I remember Barry saying, I think they had 2-3 games to go, and everybody was sort of shifting towards Derry because it was in their hands. They managed to mess that up. They managed to go and beat Pats, beat Cork, beat Shells, beat Bows, and then get beat by Drogheda in the final. And I'm not undermining Drogheda by any stretch of the imagination. But if you can go and beat those 4 teams, you'd imagine you'd go and have enough against Drogheda. So I don't know whether it was mindset, Raf, or what it was, but Drogheda were absolutely excellent. And I'm sure we'll touch on it now in a little while, but totally different mind shift for them now in the Bray game.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, as you mentioned there, Diallo could have done better. I think I've heard that phrase a few times before. But anyway, Barry Murphy, you were one of the 38,723 in attendance there. And before we listen to Kevin Doherty, can you just maybe talk to us about the role he played in that as manager? Not just, I suppose, on the day itself, but in over the last 2 or 3 years, where he's been the central figure in terms of keeping Drogheda's head over water and then now delivering a trophy.
Yeah, he's been incredible. Him and Darragh, I think, since he took over from Tim, he's kind of changed things around a little bit. He's got a bit of a siege mentality, kind of going with the players he has. And listen, yesterday was so special. I kind of said it yesterday, it's amazing what can be achieved when you don't care who gets the credit. And that's kind of the motto of this team. They're kind of made up of lads who've maybe been surplus to requirements at other clubs, redemption stories. Dave Webster, my old roomie, last time taken to the pitch, mixed with hungry, low knees, and a manager who's got the best out of him and got the tactics spot on. And as Keith said, it was a bold move putting Ahui up against Duffy there. But on the other side, he's done it as well with Kane and McMullen. He's basically allowed Stroud to overload the midfield. And when you look at kind of that 3-4-2-1, 3-5-2, whatever way you want to look at it, playing James Taylor in behind Piero, he kind of dropped into the top of that midfield as well to kind of outnumber them with Markey, Brennan and Farrell in there as well. And that's where they won it on the pitch. They were first to everything on the pitch, and Derry just looks so leggy. And when you talk about the quality of Drogheda and the stories on the pitch, Derry were the antithesis of that, really. They obviously did a couple of injuries to key players, but who hasn't at this time of the year? And they were just hoping for big moments from big players, and they lacked intensity, ingenuity. It was the exact same Drogheda team that beat Derry a couple of weeks ago, beat them 2-1, and Derry played the exact same way and did the exact same yesterday. So they're not learning from those mistakes, and that's what's probably so frustrating for Derry fans, that to go out and do the exact same thing, repeat the exact same thing yesterday, but we'll take away nothing from that Drogheda performance. And even you look at the way Kev talks about his Dara as well, like he's said he noticed in the footage in the lead up to the games how Derry switched off at the back post. So little things like that detail on the day was massive, and obviously got them on the right footing with that first goal.
Yeah, let's listen to Kevin Doherty now, who was speaking pitch side after the final whistle.
Like, even to get lads on the pitch, like even Gary Deegan, Gary Deegans, the Luke Keeneys, the Adam Foley's, Brian Brennan, Darren have been with me from the start. Connor Kane, he left to come back, had a bad injury. Again, some of the stuff, Shane Farrell in tears there the last time he was on this pitch, came off at half time, and to be fair, he's been amazing for us. Connor Kane missed out that day.
Yeah.
A goalkeeper, look, Luke Dennison, excellent. I thought it's going to sound like I'm patting myself in the back, but I thought the game plan worked really well, and that's why, probably I said before the game, we went with the same team that played the game that you were at in our place, and I had a feeling if we were at it, it would work.
Yeah, you weren't going to divulge the exact game plan when we spoke to you before the match, but what exactly had you in mind for the game today, tactically?
Again, it's just shape, and I don't mean the actual formation. I mean plugging holes, don't let them Derry. Like, you see the player, the McElhennys, the Duffys. Yeah. Like, we did a lot of work on Duffy before in his duels, and when we looked at the stats, Elicha had done the best job on him in the whole league. So again, that was really important. But they're so good players. You can have one plan and then something else happen. But everyone had to stand up. Lads at the end, Dave Webster wasn't even playing a lot of time in the first division last year with Bray. So the players, have carried out. All go in with plans and tactics and shapes and all. But the players have to carry it out, and they were magnificent. And the platform, again, was the two lads up front, and they caused them a lot of trouble.
Kevin Doherty there speaking pitch side there to the panel after the game, and kind of alludes to a lot of the tactical things that have been spoken about here on the podcast already from the decider. But I suppose, Keith, looking overall, I suppose in the build-up, as you said, not a lot of people gave Drogheda a chance, and a lot of it was being talked about in the sense of this big pitch and would they be able to close down the spaces. But it looked like, to be honest, Drogheda go in as underdogs in a sense, but they didn't look like it throughout a lot of that performance.
Yeah, they seemed, I think Ahui actually said it in his interview after. He said, look, the press weren't really honest. They were on Derry, so we just come in and had I wouldn't say a free swing, but they just felt like they had that freedom. And I think everybody, Drogheda probably included, although it's brilliant to win the FAI Cup, they're probably thinking next Saturday is a bigger game for them. It would be in my eyes. So it's absolutely excellent stuff. I think the two up front that Kevin Doherty has touched on there, Piero and James Taylor up front, again, in hindsight, excellent decision. But you'd be thinking, do you really want two up front? Because then you're losing somebody in the midfield. How good is Derry's midfield? They're going to be able to bop it round. You've got Duffy in 1v1s, McMullen on the other side. Again, you can look at this and go, yeah, it's all basic stuff what he's done, but you have to give the lads the confidence to go out and do what they did. And again, to be scratching this up and say who he did the best job on Duffy during the league season, they decided, well, we'll go with this formation again. And I love it. The 5-3-2, it was pretty much a flat back five at times, but when Connor Kane did go forward, he won the penalty kick for Drogheda that ultimately did get them over the line. So some of the tactical stuff from Kevin Doherty, although it was probably simplistic and basic, you would shy away from it because of the level of opposition you're playing against. But he just put emphasis on 1v1s duels. And again, the Drogheda players largely came out on top of the 1v1s duels, which made them win the game, got them over the line.
Yeah, and of course, Barry Landy as well. When you look at the, we talk about the front two, Darren Markey had a brilliant game and the whole behind them. But some of the characters within that team, I think some of them have been mentioned as well. Barry Murphy's already sort of talked about his old roommate, Dave Webster, who has one final game to play, which of course is a promotion relegation playoff. But then Shane Farrell, who delivers in the free kick and has had a tough time from towards the end of his time at Shells, and then also I suppose Ryan Brennan as well there as somebody who's sort of representative of the area and the club. So that's a huge part of this story for Drogheda.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters in that dressing room, Raf, and I think even just going back to what the lads have talked about earlier, even in reference to the one-on-ones in the wing backs in the wing back positions with Kane and Ahui, Kevin Doherty backs his players. That's what he does. He gives them trust. He backs them to take on a man one-to-one and to do their job. And also as well, yeah, you talk about Shane Farrell and Connor Kane and people like that. There are lots of, as Barry said earlier, redemption stories in this team. Shane Farrell's had a rough 2023 first half of it, but he's come in and had a real impact to Drogheda. Connor Kane missed the final in 2022 through that horrible injury he had at Shelbourne, but he's come back to Drogheda and he's been one of their best players this season, in my opinion. Luke Dennison was the third choice goalkeeper at Bohemians as recently as June, and now he's an FAI Cup final starting and winning goalkeeper. And even the likes of Douglas James Taylor, who's come from Walsall, he wasn't getting a look in at a League Two club, and now he was playing in front of nearly 40,000 people in an FAI Cup final and scoring a winning penalty. There's lots of good characters in that dressing room. I'm delighted for Ryan Brennan. He played in the 2013 final and scored a late goal that he thought was bringing the game to extra time, only for Anthony Elding then to score for Sligo and crush Drogheda. And it was real heartbreak for them at that time. So I was delighted for him. His brother Gavin played in that game as well, and Gavin and Killian and Sean were all there at the match yesterday, and there was a lovely family photo taken after the game. Yeah, look, that Drogheda team is full of cast-offs and misfits and unknowns and things like that. James Bulger was playing in the Swedish 4th division as recently as the summer. He had no League of Ireland experience coming into this, but he's started virtually every game for Drogheda since I think mid-July, and he's slotted in quite well, and I would expect to see him at Drogheda again next season. But that's all up in the air with the playoff to come during the week. And even Elicha, Ahui coming back to the club, he'd been at Drogheda last year and he had loan spells at Dundee in the Scottish Championship, or at Ayr United, I should say, in the Scottish Championship, and Peterborough Sports, and they didn't go great. He'd been released by Lincoln and he's come back and been the man of the match in the cup final. So they're not, League of Ireland stalwarts. They're not necessarily illustrious names, but as a unit, Drogheda United are a really good side. If you look at the form table in the second half of the league, I think Drogheda would be competing for Europe on the basis of that over the course of a season. So for them to qualify for the Conference League next year is a huge thing for them, and is probably over the piece. You wouldn't have expected to see it, but over the last 4 months, they're definitely a team that you would think can compete with any of the other teams competing for the European spots in the league.
Yeah, and they're in Europe now, of course, by dint of winning the cup as well. And Derry City miss out entirely. Let's listen to Ruadhri Higgins first, and then I'll just get Barry Murphy's thoughts in terms of the longer term, well, the shorter, medium, and longer term at Derry City.
Ruadhri, commiserations. Can you explain, put your finger on what happened today?
No, listen, it was ultimately we had quite a bit of the ball throughout the game, but we didn't carve them open often enough. We didn't disrupt their structure. We did have 2 really good chances at 0-0 that in cup finals you need to take. They had very few chances, but when they got them, they took them and they punished us. But we've got to take 1 or 2 of those chances, and it's a different game. But listen, ultimately we had loads of possession, but didn't hurt the opposition enough, and we have to accept that. We have to accept that over the last 3-4 weeks that we haven't done the business when it's really mattered, and that's a tough one to take.
To get to this final, though, you hadn't conceded a goal. You played top teams, and yet that inconsistency came in the game you needed to win the most.
Absolutely. Again, there's no getting away from it. We 3-4 weeks ago, as I said, we had the opportunity to win 2 trophies, and ultimately we've come up short, and it's been a really disappointing end the season, and we have to take it on the chin. I thought the travelling supporters were amazing. They stuck with us. They stuck with us right to the very, very end, and they've been brilliant. And it's them I really feel for. The commitment they get down here in huge numbers. As you could imagine, it's a really difficult one to take. And
is it a big job to lift the team now for next season after the disappointment in both the league and the cup?
Well, it's clear. I think it needs a refresh. It needs a reboot. The squad, and I'm sure we'll all work hard to try and do that, and come back stronger. In these situations, you can either roll over and or you can dig in and fight and scrap. And I think where we're from, the city that we're from, there's only one way we know.
All right, so that's Derry City manager Ruadhri Higgins there speaking to Tony O'Donoghue after the match, and obviously you can tell from his demeanour there he's absolutely crestfallen, and you do feel for him. One thing he does say there, Barry Murphy, is the need for a refresh or a reboot. From your point of view, what does that look like, or what does that entail in the short to medium term?
I don't think he's going to be the man that's there to do that reboot. I think things have probably gone too far. You mentioned the Derry fans yesterday and how they travelled in numbers, which they did, but I think they came down in hope more than expectation, and kind of felt that it was always going to be, if Drogheda put it up to them, would they have the backbone to go and meet that? And I don't think they thought themselves that was going to happen. And you could kind of see it throughout the week. It was kind of just looking at some of the build-up for Derry, it just seemed flat in comparison to Drogheda. Like the work they did, it was almost politician-like, going out the week before an election, going to all the schools, getting everybody G'd up to come down and help them to get over the line in terms of winning the cup. And it just didn't seem like that from Derry. And you could probably trace it back to July from that Magpies game. It's just kind of gone stale up there, really. And they were still in a title contest at that stage up until the last 3 games. And you think, like, he's got a year left on his contract, but will they give him the chance to go and rebuild that when he's had 3 years to build a team now, and he just hasn't done it? They've brought in certain players. You thought Houben was going to be the man that missing link up front to go and win him a title, and that hasn't happened. His goals have kind of dried up towards the end. Just been some glaring obvious things that needed to be addressed. Centre half needed to be addressed. Probably needed somebody in midfield that was going to be able to play every game. You just look at the quality of McElhenney, and that was obvious he was going to be injury prone as well. And patching has been in and out and hasn't covered from as well as you'd like. But you just look at it really, and the contract situations are a massive thing as well. You look at the likes of Brian Maher, who's out of contract at the end of the year. How is he not tied down to a deal? It's obvious he's looking elsewhere, or he's been talked to elsewhere, and maybe they can't get him over the line. And those little sort of things should be sorted out before going into a massive cup final, to give you that kind of G up before a cup final, and players know they're going to be there next season. And that's just been missing for the last couple of months in Derry, and I think the change will come at the top.
Yeah, just how much work is needed on the squad, Keith, when you look at it overall, just as I suppose Barry has just alluded to there. I mean, Gareth McGlynn, the former Derry City player and a cup winner in his own right as well, who was part of our coverage, he said at the end of it that he felt the players let Ruadhri Higgins down. So in terms of when you look at that squad, what needs to change?
I don't think an awful lot, Raf. I think when you look at the Derry team or the Derry squad on paper, you'd be absolutely buzzing to come in and take charge of that dressing room, because there's an awful lot of talent. It would be the envy of most, if not all. Probably only Shamrock Rovers can boast a stronger squad than what Derry have. I just think a lot of them have underperformed. And like you said, when Gareth McGlynn has come out and said that the Derry players have let them down, he has, because on paper, and again, you can say this, Drogheda were the underdogs, and it's not to sound disrespectful, but on paper, Derry should be beating Drogheda every single day of the week with the amount of talent they have, the resources they have, the size of the club. They're a full-time outfit. They should have easily been able to, maybe not easily, but they should have been able to turn that screw. They should have been able to find holes. And when Rory's coming out and he said it needs a refresh, I think that's extremely honest from him. And generally, when it needs a refresh, you're not going to refresh with 10, 11 players. You're going to refresh with a new manager. So I think he's probably just let us peek behind the curtain there of his own thoughts. And look, has he done a good job? I think he's done an okay job. The fact that they've ended up finishing fourth and they feel like they possibly had one hand on the league, and then they haven't made Europe, and then they've lost the FAI Cup final, haven't been so strong all the way to the final. It just seems that when the chips are down with this Derry team, they don't perform. And like I say, they're not going to do a whole overhaul of getting rid of these players, because there'll be a lot of teams queuing up to take them. So I think a large majority of the players will stay, and the man at the helm will be the one to make way.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out in the longer term. One of the other issues in the build up to the game that was brought up was just in terms of stadium infrastructure, and this is off the back of the large scale Sport Infrastructure Fund grant scheme. And there was good news for Bohemians with the announcement last week that the project to redevelop the Dalymount Park site would receive government funding of €24.7 million. Sligo Rovers are also receiving 16.4 million, which will go towards upgrading facilities along with an increased seating capacity to 6,129, and Wexford FC also receiving 2 million towards their new ground. Now, let's listen to Daniel Lambert, the Bows Chief Operating Officer, and Sligo Chairperson Tommy Higgins.
It's massive. It's the biggest news we've had in decades, I'd say. The redevelopment of the Dalymount Park is so critical to us, to the future of the club, also to the local area here. But we're seeing the development of the league, the growth in crowds, and we've been at a ceiling for a number of years now. We've a huge youth section, grassroots section, so many teams, young boys and girls, disability football, inclusion football, and those kids haven't been able to come to Dalymount. So it's so critical on so many levels. Financially, it's also key for us.
It's a game changer for the club. My background was the entertainment business, and I see what happens when you upgrade your facilities. More people will come. I know it's a cliche, build it, they will come. But I do believe that providing better facilities, you're going to have more people. That's the vision that we have for the club. And we can see we have a business plan put together, and it's up to us now to execute it.
Right, Tommy Higgins is the last voice you heard there, and then before that, Daniel Lambert. Now, Drogheda United were not part of this round of funding that was announced in regard to their own new stadium. And Jed Nash, the Jed Nash TD for the area, he said, devastated to see the new Drogheda United stadium will not be funded by the government. Our game is on the up, and the need for a new ground is evident to everyone, eagerly awaiting the explanation as to why the application backed by Louth County Council hasn't been given the nod. So Drogheda had applied for a 16 million grant to go towards the planned proposed new stadium, but were not successful. So Barry Landy, in terms of, I suppose, your reaction to that as well, because I think the last time you were on with us, you spoke about the ambitions that Trevella Group has in terms of what they want to do for the club and the area, and in the longer term, a stadium has to be part of that in terms of upgrading for Weavers Park. So what's your thoughts on what the TD Jed Nash said there, and I suppose the situation that Drogheda have been left in now in terms of this round of funding?
Well, Jed Nash is right in that Drogheda's need for a new stadium is urgent. At the moment, the club are in a position where they're turning people away at the gates. United Park just doesn't have, or Weavers Park just doesn't have the capacity to deal with the upsurge in interest and with new fans that are being attracted to the club, especially given their FAI Cup run this year, taking thousands and thousands of fans to the Aviva. Interest is only going to grow, and looking at next season, it'll be a similar situation again. They'll be turning people away at the turnstiles because they just can't facilitate everyone who wants to get tickets around Drogheda. Like, of course, Drogheda is it's a big town. It's growing every year. And yeah, look, at the moment, I think Trevella's reaction to this actually in the week was kind of very much calm. They described it as a bump in the road. So they're not getting too worked up about it. The reasoning that the minister gave for not funding Drogheda at this point was due to a lack of planning permission, and also Drogheda have not actually acquired the land on the northeast side of the town that they need to build the stadium. It's been earmarked by Louth County Council, but the actual deal to acquire that land hasn't actually gone through yet. So that was the reasoning the minister gave. He felt that the projects at Dalymount and over in Sligo were further progressed in terms of those kind of things. So that's why he says they've got the funding. Drogheda are confident that come the next round of funding, whenever that might be, under whatever government that might be, that they will be next in line. That's what the minister told them last week in a phone call with Joanna Byrne, the co-chairman, and Wes Hill from Trevella. He assured them that they're very much next in line, and as far as they're concerned, they're quite calm. But look, the need for a new stadium, anyone who goes to United Park every week, or even visitors to the stadium on occasion, will know that the need for a new stadium is great there. United Park just is not fit for purpose. in 2024 for a growing League of Ireland club. And look, it's wait and see, I suppose, for Drogheda at the moment.
Yeah, so wait and see for Drogheda there. But Barry Murphy, I suppose, on the good news front from the Dalymount Park side of things, and also from the upgrade to the showgrounds, that's a very positive step, especially when we're talking about infrastructure, week on week almost on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly, and it's kind of a two-pronged attack to it as well. You want to strike when the iron's hot and keep these people coming to the grounds. They're not going to keep turning up every week if they can't get in. And while the product is brilliant on the pitch, we also have to make sure that it's good off the pitch. So for television rights and for yourselves, RTÉ, Virgin, the likes to come and especially in European games to come and put games on in these stadiums, they have to have the right backdrop to attract the sponsorship that's needed to progress this league, for people to come back and come to games, for even for girls to go to toilets and to have something to eat at halftime. Those are basic things in other leagues that have slowly progressed, but it's down to the clubs themselves that they've slowly progressed in that sort of way. You look at Inchicore, the kind of stuff they've done themselves around Pat's getting people in and improving the stadium off their own bat. But now with the likes of Dalymount, they're going to be like some of the best stadiums in the country at the moment, and the highest kind of grade, and that's kind of where the league needs to go. We need to have that base standard, and obviously what has happened with clubs recently in the last couple of years, they got their act together in terms of employing for these grants, and that's something that the minister has said, that these grants have been open to clubs before, but they've never gone about it the right way, clubs in applying, and that's something that I think the gap is closed a little on other sports for this league.
Yeah, and of course, the story for Drogheda United this season not over. As mentioned, Dave Webster's retirement had to be put on hold until for another week. Obviously, they have a 6-day turnaround from the FAI Cup final for the promotion relegation decider. So that's 2:00 Saturday. Drogheda United against Bray Wanderers at Tallaght Stadium. And in terms of the turnaround there, Keith, that Drogheda have, it's going to be a psychological shift as well, because they're going from underdogs going into an FAI Cup final, or at least billed as underdogs. Didn't look, as we kind of noted, that's not how it actually played out on the day itself. And then now they're going to be heavy favourites, which can be a bit of a risky thing. I think, as Barry Murphy said previously, from his own experiences of playing in these sort of promotion relegation deciders, they can be quite tricky when you're the favourite going in. So it's a mind shift for them.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Drogheda go about it. First and foremost, we all said we felt that Derry had a little bit too much for Drogheda on paper. I look at this game and I feel that Drogheda have a little bit too much for Bray. But look, whatever Bray do tactically could obviously counteract that. Will Kevin Doherty go for a 5-3-2 again? I'm not too sure. I think Bray might go to a 4-2-3-1, and you don't really want to be in a flat back five then, especially if you're, the team that are tasked with going to win the game. Bray will be more than happy to let this go 0-0 longer and longer, and see if anybody gets a little bit tetchy and see what they can get from that. And look, Bray have some decent players. Killian Cantwell, Evan Ozam is there as well. Christian Magnuson, I'm not sure if I said that right, but he has 9 goals already this season. He's a really decent striker. So they've different little options to hurt you with. But when you look at Bray's league form, they played 36 games this season, Raf. They won 14 and they lost 13. So they weren't, a team that was going and battering everybody. They do have that losing feeling. Drogheda have started to get their act together. You would think Markey, Farrell, James Taylor, Piero up front, they will have too much quality for them. But the shift in emphasis, the shift in formation, the shift in tactics could easily bog it all down. Sometimes teams are suited to being the underdog, and Drogheda largely this season in the League of Ireland have been underdogs. Now they're going to be tasked with going to win a game rather than going to nick a game. So it's going to be difficult for them. I don't see it being easy. But I do think when you look at it on paper, when you look at the strikers that Drogheda have, some of the boys in the middle, it's just whether a case, are they still out partying from the FAI Cup win, which you would imagine is not the case, because you're listening to Kevin Doherty after and said, look, we have a bigger game on Saturday. And for me, if you'd have put these two games side by side and said, look, you can only afford to win one of these, it would be the relegation playoff final for me, because staying in the league is your bread and butter. The FAI Cup final is a huge showcase, the marquee Irish event, but staying in the league is Drogheda's remit. Kevin Doherty was not told to go and win the FAI Cup at the start of the season. He was told to keep Drogheda in the league. So this for me is a big, big game that Bray will make difficult. They'll make it really difficult at times, but I can only see Drogheda coming out, especially given the high and the confidence they have from the FAI Cup final.
And Barry Murphy, how do you expect Bray to set up in terms of, as Keith has outlined there, Drogheda have so many threats from so many different positions, and Bray have their own as well, as you mentioned, as well there. But to try and stay in the game for as long as possible, how do you feel they should set up tactically at least?
Yeah, I think, as Keith said, I think that's how they're set up. But they do have good outlets as well. Ciaran Kilduff, come from Shamrock Rovers, he's a really good winger, and he's been supplying Mark Reeson with the balls for his 9 goals this season. But just in terms of this, compared to other playoff finals, it's a once off. Like when I played in about 15 years ago, it was over 2 legs, so you felt you had a chance to, if you messed up in the first, to go and get something in the second. So tactically, you're going to set up to stay in that game as long as you can, get it to go the whole way. If you can, it gives yourself a 50-50 chance. And I just think Bray will try and hold on as long as they can and try and nick something and get it that way. But listen, you'd fancy Drogheda to go and do the business. And you just listen to Kevin during the week talking about the build up to the FAI Cup final. They went out to Abbottstown and trained on a pitch that was the exact dimensions of the Aviva Stadium, and obviously they've gone into that level of detail with things. I don't think anything will be missed going into this game on next week.
Yeah, and Barry Landy, I suppose, from Drogheda's point of view as well, maybe that cup semi-final against Wexford where they got pushed right to the brink will probably be a blessing in disguise in a sense, just a reminder of how tricky things can be against first division teams.
Yeah, 100%. Like Drogheda's run to the FAI Cup final, they played non-league Wilton, then they played Athlone Town actually in the quarter-final, beat them 4-1 in Athlone, and then of course there was the semi against Wexford 3-2. That game, I think a lot of people were really confident going into it, and it turned out to be a lot more tricky than a lot of people would have thought. So, yeah, you're right. I think it'll just focus minds a little bit. I know Kevin Doherty will have the lads in training today at 1 o'clock. They're in the gym at 1 p.m. So they weren't going crazy last night by any means. I think they were all staying up in the City North Hotel just outside Drogheda, but it was bed by midnight or bed by 1 a.m. or something like that anyway. So no one was staying up too late and getting too leery. Just on what Keith said there earlier as well, like I think in terms of formation and how Drogheda will approach the game, they've been playing that 3-5-2 pretty much since the Dundalk FAI Cup game in mid-July. Kevin hasn't really wavered from that formation, so I fully expect them to stick with it, regardless of opposition. It'll a tricky one, I think, psychologically, just bringing the lads back down to earth a little bit. After such a high yesterday, and just getting them focused again on another game on Saturday. As Keith said earlier, probably a bigger game. Drogheda need to stay in the Premier Division, and a cup final win would be really undermined, let's say, if they were to then end up losing this game against Bray as the fancy team. So yeah, look, I would fancy Drogheda as well, but as Keith said and made the point, a lot of people fancy Derry on paper. A lot of people fancy Drogheda on paper, and the game's not played on paper.
Yeah, and I know Drogheda enjoy Louth derbies, but they wouldn't want to be playing them in the first division, of course, which is where Dundalk are at the moment. And Ciaran Kilduff has been brought in as manager now. That's been confirmed, and obviously a former player who would have been with them between 2015 and 2017. In terms of the off-the-field stuff, because that's been the more dominant thing, Barry Landy, in the sense of where they've been at, and particularly I think the most recent thing they were talking about, or John Temple was talking about, the potential of going into Scarp and some of the stumbling blocks that are left there. What are you hearing at the moment from your own vantage point?
Yeah, well, Dundalk are still going through the licensing process for next season. Scarp will play into that, whether they go into it or go out of it. John Temple is more positive, I think, last week when he was speaking at the Ciaran Kilduff press conference than he was before that about the possibility of avoiding Scarp. So we'll see how that plays out, but it seems to change almost on a weekly basis, whether or not how Dundalk are going to sort of approach dealing with the debt that they're in at the moment. Ciaran Kilduff has signed a 2-year deal, which is, I think, a good thing in terms of stability. I didn't think Dundalk would be in a position to be offering anyone 2-year deals at the moment. And we've also seen a Dervin sign a new contract as well, so the squad building has begun. He hasn't ruled out the possibility of Daryl Horgan staying on, and a few other stalwarts that are under contract at the club. But I still think there's a lot of question marks about off the field. John Temple told me last week that he received no indication from the FAI that they would have any issue with licensing. But there are still question marks about debts to former players and former managers and things like that will have to be sorted. I know the FAI are liaising with them in regards to that, and hopefully it's sorted soon, because Ciaran Kilduff will want some clarity moving forward in terms of budgets and things like that. But yeah, look, it's still very uncertain at Dundalk. I think a lot will be made more clear, you would feel, in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think as David McMillan said on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, I think the more important thing is that there is a club there in January going forward in terms of in the first division and everything else. But of course, as we said, Drogheda United in Europe next season. Shamrock Rovers are in Europe this season, and so far so good with 7 points from 9. I was at Tallaght Stadium last Thursday to cover the TNS game, and it was a 2-1 win, perhaps more comfortable in a way than the scoreline suggested. But either way, afterwards I was speaking to Shamrock Rovers manager Stephen Bradley just about what they're going to be doing in the interim before they resume the campaign, the Conference League phase campaign when it returns after the international break. And of course, they have a friendly with HJK in between. And then he also talks about Johnny Kenny's future.
Well, I think it's important after tonight that the players get time off, because the way the season is going to pan out, we're not going to get a lot of time off at the end of the season. So we got to give it within the games as much as possible. So the players will shut down now for a few days. They'll switch off, enjoy the time away. And then we're back and we get ready for HJK and then build up to Vienna, and that's going to be sort of the process going forward.
Yeah, and then I suppose Johnny Kenny's future has been kind of the subject of interest as well, given the timing of when this is happening as well. What talks have you had, I suppose, behind the scenes?
Look, we have a brilliant relationship with Celtic at all levels, but and our feelings are quite clear on it, but we got to also respect that Celtic are the ones that Johnny's contracted it, and they control it, and whatever they decide goes. But like I said, I think everyone recognises that Shamrock Rovers are being good for Johnny, and he's been brilliant for us, so I'd like to continue that.
Yeah, and I suppose the 7-point mark as well that you have got to, and I know Craig Harrison beforehand, he had been talking about the fact that 7 points may well be enough to actually get through to the playoff round. What's your thinking around it at this stage? Because the permutations are hard to sort of nail down at this moment, given this is the first iteration of this new revamped format.
I think we know more after the late games this evening, but I think before tonight, 7 points was 97% to get you into the playoffs, which is obviously really high. So hopefully that remains the case, but we'll see after tonight. But our aim is to try and get more points on the board, and let's see where that can take us.
Yeah, 97%. That's odds that I think Shamrock Rovers fans will probably like at this stage in terms of getting to the playoff round. And 3 more games to go: Rapid Vienna, then Borac Banja Luka of Bosnia, which is crucially a home game for Shamrock Rovers, and then of course the Chelsea game on the 19th of December. But overall, Barry Murphy, the Shamrock Rovers performance, what did you make of it against TNS?
Yeah, I thought they were excellent. They kind of was looking at that, you'd think, is it going to be similar to the Larne game? But TNS were a major step up from Larne, the way they played, and obviously going 1-0 down early on as well, kind of put Rovers on the back foot, but they responded so well. And obviously a brilliant finish from Johnny Kenny, and Stephen just talked about his impact there and how we can stretch the game. And it was kind of similar to the Larne game, and that the centre halves didn't know whether to go short with them and kind of free up that space for the Rovers midfield to dominate the way they did up in Windsor Park, or to stay long with them, and they did kind of neither. And Johnny Kenny got in behind and obviously got a really good finish as well. And then for Dylan Watts, who picked up the Player of the Year award for Shamrock Rovers as well, to go and get the winner was just incredible from Rovers. Really, it was just a really seasoned performance. You kind of didn't see any kind of reaction from the crowd or from the players when they went 1-0 down, and they just kind of expected them to come back into the game, and that's what they did. And just in terms of what they're going to do going forward, obviously they've got that friendly against HJK, which we're covering with League of Ireland TV. I'm on commentary for that, and what they've kind of looked at the way that Banja Luka have set up and that Rapid Vienna have set up, and they kind of play in that 4-2-3-1 formation, so they're kind of looking around Europe to see who's out of the season or out of game time as well, and try and find somebody that they could match up against and try and play against that formation. And they found that in HJK, so it'd be interesting to see what way Rovers set up against them. And Banja Luka kind of play a weird kind of formation. It's 4-2-2-2 kind of formation. It's an odd one, so not sure how much you'll learn out of that from the HJK game. But going into that game against Banja Luka, they really target that one to get to the 10-point mark, and then you've got a free shot at Vienna and Chelsea for a chance to get into the knockout stage.
Yeah, and that HJK game, 21st of November, and then there's a second game against the same team, but behind closed doors as well. So it'll just give them, I think, as Stephen Bradley said there, they probably do need a break at this stage, because the way it looks like they're going to be playing European football in the new year, and that means there won't be necessarily like a proper preseason or however way that works. But one thing they will want, and as alluded there, Keith, is to have Johnny Kenny in the squad. Obviously, he's on loan from Celtic, which runs out at the end of this year. And he scored a really cracking goal in the game as well. I was speaking to him afterwards in the mix zone, and he seems to have really developed and taken another step forward this season.
Yeah, he seems to really mix up his runs. He's so good, like Barry says. He can come to feet, he can stretch it in behind. He's a really decent finisher as well, and he'll probably, Shamrock Rovers will be looking at him thinking he's doing so well. Celtic might just have an eye on him and think, well, we throw him into our team. And look, I think he's a little bit behind some of the bigger names that Celtic may have. So maybe they'll think, look, like Stephen Bradley has said, Shamrock Rovers have been good for Johnny Kenny, and Johnny Kenny's been good for Shamrock Rovers. So why change a good thing? If he's going to go into that Celtic team, by all means, take him back. He's your player. But if you're going to bring him back and throw him into the reserves and see how he goes, I don't think player or club needs that. I don't think that benefits anybody. He's better off doing what he's doing with Shamrock Rovers, and at least, staying there until next season, have another season with Shamrock Rovers, because it all looks good. And what they're doing in Europe, the way Shamrock Rovers play football, it's very suited to the way Celtic play football in Scotland. Celtic are obviously the big dogs in Scotland. Shamrock Rovers, although they haven't won the league this season, would be regarded as one of the bigger teams in the League of Ireland, and they're a possession-based team. So a lot of the things link up with what Celtic will want it to do. So unless they've got a bigger, better team knocking on the door to take him on loan, or do you want to put him into their first team, I'd leave him where he is. But ultimately, like Stephen Bradley says, it's all going to be up to Celtic.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out, but I would imagine we'll have word definitely by the end of the year, one way or the other. But I said we were going to talk about international football, and we certainly are. First thing to note, though, the Ireland women's are going to be taking on Turkey, Greece and Slovenia in next year's Nations League Group B2. And of course, they have a final European or playoff for Euro 2025 to come in the next few weeks as well, which is huge, obviously, for the girls in green as well. But the boys in green are in Nations League action this week, and this is the final round of fixtures in their group this Thursday, live on RT2 and the RT player from 7 o'clock. They're playing Finland at the Aviva Stadium, 7:45 p.m. kickoff, and also there's radio coverage on 2FM's game, on which the program itself is kicking off at 6 p.m. And then on Sunday, they are playing at Wembley, 5 o'clock kickoff against England, live on RT2 and the RT player, with coverage starting from 4 o'clock, and then also on RT Radio 1's Sunday Sport in terms of commentary. The squad was named last week. I suppose the big introduction, I suppose, is Andy Moran, not going to be his first cap. Of course, he's been capped before, but Keith, this is going to be interesting to see how he is integrated in and what position he actually plays, because he is kind of versatile. He can play as a 10, he can possibly play as an 8, and he can play a little bit out wide. But what's your expectation in terms of when he'll play in this window? I presume the England game, definitely not from the start, I would imagine, but what position do you expect to see him?
Yeah, the England game is deep water. I made my international debut against Argentina in the Aviva, and I thought that was deep water. That was only a friendly. Can you imagine playing in a competitive fixture away to England in Wembley? My God Almighty, that'd be some deep water for the young man. And look, I think he's obviously coming in. If he is to get game time, I don't want to be pessimistic, but we could be losing by a couple towards the end of the English game, and you throw him on as a pat on the back towards the end of the calendar year, and you say, look, well done, you've been brilliant for the 21s. Your individual club career is going really well. There's a little pat on the back for you, well done. But the finish game for me is obviously the one where we're thinking, can we go and win 3 points here? Can we avoid being bottom of the table this time around? And yeah, I think we can. Obviously, we're missing some stalwarts for us, some players like Robbie Brady is somebody that probably wouldn't be the envy of most international teams, but for us, he's somebody we need. When you look at Shane Duffy coming back into the squad, it lends my mind to thinking, well, we're going to play a 5 at the back. Otherwise, he's dropping a Premier League centre half, which is very difficult to comprehend when we don't have an awful lot of Premier League players in our team. So I'm not sure if we're going to go to a 5 at the back, but then I'm thinking left wing back, I'm not too sure. So there's still an awful lot of question marks all over the place. I think we're going to play a 5-3-2 personally, but I worry about our midfield in terms of the capacity to keep the ball. I think it'll be back to front, but with 2 up front, that's not a big deal. And look, I think Benny is going to be a huge Mitch Smallbone. We're starting to make waves with us as well. And obviously Robbie Brady's a big one. What I would like to see though, Raf, the second half of the Finnish game over there, we absolutely battered them. I know it was a last-minute goal by Robbie Brady and we ended up winning the game. It felt like a bit of a smash and a grab. We 35% of the ball in the second half and we 7 shots on target. Finland had none. We absolutely battered them, and it wasn't any sort of nice, neat, intricate play. It was just bite down in here and let's see what they can get. Let's ask questions of the Finnish defenders. And eventually we got our reward with Robbie sneaking in at the back post. So although we look like we're getting better against teams around us, we're always going to have a little knockback. Like we could go and beat Finland on Thursday or be competitive and draw the game, and then we could get a knockback against England, which is probably to be expected. But we failed to score in 3 out of our 4 games again. We've conceded 7 in our 4 games. So for all the talk, every time I speak to anybody about this Ireland team, they always say, but our defenders are brilliant. Our defenders are very good. Maybe our defenders aren't as good as we think they are. Hence Shane Duffy coming back in from a Norwich team that's in the championship. So we've got the likes of a Jake O'Brien that's at Everton, granted not playing football. Ama Bemidele at Forest, not playing an awful lot of football either. And we're dipping into the championship to bring Shane Duffy back. I like it, Raf. I think it's a bold move. I think Duffy suits the way this Irish team has to play. But I think there's a big name going to be very, very peeved off by what the manager's about to do. And we're talking about Doherty coming back into the squad, having not been originally picked. Where's his head at? Because I know if I was Doherty and I'm not being picked in the original team and I'm being told I'm put on standby and then you're back in when somebody gets injured, just thinks, well, I'm a little bit old in the tooth to be a fringe player here. You either want me or you don't. I can go and sit on a beach in Dubai and just say I'm injured. So it's a very, very difficult one to keep players on side. And look, this Irish team is still a very, very fragile Irish team. We're low on confidence. We need to get an identity and a way of playing that suits us. And I think Hamer is bringing us closer to that. I think we're getting tougher to beat. But in terms of competing and trying to get out of groups and stuff like that, we're still a million miles away.
Yeah, just to follow up on what you said about Doherty there, because of course, I don't think we spoke about it on the podcast at the time, but of course he spoke to David Sneyd in an interview, I think it was just about a month ago in the 42, where he was very honest about where he felt he was at in terms of the Ireland squad. And there's a quote here where he talks about that is what Hamer said to him, basically, that is exactly what he said to me. I just haven't been playing that much, so I don't really have an argument with things at the moment. But obviously I should be in the squad, even if I'm not playing or not going to play. I should still obviously be in there. But yeah, I'm patient. I wasn't happy, but I got to spend time with my kids. I do expect to be in the next squad. He wasn't actually initially picked in the next squad, which is kind of interesting. But I think the thing that caught a lot of people's attention was obviously I should be in the squad, and the fact that Hamer Hallgrimsson overlooked him initially. And his argument has always been that, look, we know what he brings to the table. We're looking at other options, etc. But what does that say? What's your reading of it? I suppose somebody who's been in Ireland squads before, when a manager is sort of leaving out a player like that. And I know he's given his reasoning, but it's kind of interesting. And as you said, from Doherty's point of view, he's kind of left wondering a little bit.
I think he's trying to let him down gently, Raf. I have to be honest. I think he's trying to phase Matt Doherty out. I think he's had a look at his performances for Ireland over probably the last 2 years, and they just haven't been good enough. And we're not even getting into technical mistakes, miscontrolling the ball, or not crossing the ball to a certain standard. It's just work rate, and that cannot ever be the case with a professional footballer. You can't go onto a football pitch and people have validity behind. They can say you haven't tried enough there. There was an old saying we used to have in Ewood Park is, have you done enough as you're leaving the pitch? And you should always leave everything out there. And at times, the Greek goal in particular is one that jumps to mind when Matt is running back. You're thinking, if you just run, if you just smell danger, if you want to defend, you can stop that from happening. And look, I know Matt is probably better going forward than he is defensively, but if you're a right back or a right wing back, which Matt is, you have to be able to defend. You have to smell danger. You have to be better in 1v1 situations. And like we're talking about Drogheda playing 5 at the back, Ahui being one-on-one with the right winger so often. If Matt wants to play in a right wing-back position for Ireland, or a right-back position, he's going to have to get comfortable in 1v1 situations, and he just isn't. He is nowhere near comfortable enough defensively. So the word obviously, when he says, I obviously should be in this squad, I think that word just doesn't sit right with me, because nobody should obviously be in this squad, especially if you're not playing. I couldn't care if you're playing for Real Madrid. If you're sitting on the bench, you're not sharp, you're not playing minutes. You need to be out there. And look, Hamer will obviously say there's an exception to the rule. Evan Ferguson is not playing an awful lot of time at Brighton at the minute, but he's a younger lad. He's finding his feet in the game, and he looks like he has that bit of talent that can unlock defences and win games for us. Matt is a totally different kettle of fish altogether. But when you tell a player he's not in the squad because he's not playing, and then there's other people creeping into the squad that aren't playing, it just starts to get a little bit of a divide. So I think he's trying to let Matt down. He's trying to let Matt down easily. The fact that he didn't get picked originally for this squad reinforces that feeling for me. But bringing him back in now and getting him to play, it just makes you think, well, how's that relationship going to be? Because I know, personally, I wouldn't have took it too well.
Yeah, so Matt Doherty back in the squad now, and also Jake O'Brien, who's also been who was out of the picture also in the previous squad, but back in just due to the injuries. Ryan Manning also, who was close to getting named in the squad but wasn't originally, he's also in, and Callum O'Dowda is probably going to start a left back, but we'll have to see in that sense. And then Seamus Coleman, of course, is out as well. And then when we look at the injury list, Chidozie Ogbene, Will Smallbone, Robbie Brady, Andrew Omobamidele, Jack Taylor, Jamie McGrath, who's just surgery on a minor injury at the moment. And then, as I mentioned, Coleman, and then Duffy, who's now out as confirmed earlier on today. And then Adam Ida as well, another injury. Barry Murphy, I suppose, looking at the litmus test that Finland are going to provide, and obviously haven't beaten them in Helsinki, and this game is probably the bigger tester than Wembley, because Wembley is sort of like a bit of a shot in the dark. It's a bit of an awkward one to go into now with all the players that are missing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And as Keith said, it's about identity now and progression. I think that's something that was leveled at Stephen Kenny for a long time, is that where's the progression? We're just not seeing us getting any better at any level. We've got over that hump now. We've got the win against Finland. You've got to go and compound that now with a performance, because you take aside the win, the performance wasn't as good as kind of people were making out against Finland. We went behind, came back and got the win, obviously, but the performance wasn't really there. It's now about going and putting in a comprehensive performance and say, right, we're above that level now. We've got to progress on and then go into that England game. Listen, it's a really tough game against England, and to come out of it with anything would be exceptional. But you've just got to show that progression, that we can go in and start to put little plans into place about how we're going to attack better nations going forward, and it starts with a win against Finland.
Yeah, and I suppose, Barry Landy, before we go, your own thoughts as well. I think the last time you were on, it was in that period where we didn't know who the manager was going to be. Obviously, Heimir Hallgrímsson has now had 4 games in charge, 1 victory in there against Finland. What's your sense of where Ireland are at, or what have you made of it so far?
A lot of the same issues, Raf, the way I look at it. I think our biggest issue is in midfield. And also it's just sustained periods within a game. So you looked at in the Finland games, the Greece games, Ireland have had spells of 30 minutes, and even obviously second half against Finland, 45 minutes where they've been really good. But there's been 45 minutes of, really, really underwhelming Ireland performances. So it's just something a little bit more sustained. Ireland need to put together a 60, 70, 80 and ideally a 90-minute performance. It's not something we've seen from this team for a very long time.
Yeah,
I do think we're liking...
just on that as well, actually, Heimir Hallgrímsson has talked about the potential of bringing in like a sports psychologist to deal with that, which is kind of an interesting nugget.
Yeah, look, you need to try different things. Sports psychology is obviously something a lot of clubs are doing these days. So it's not exactly, when you hear a manager saying we might bring in a sports psychologist, it's not cutting edge, so to speak. It's something that's been around for a while, but if it works and if the players are willing to buy into it, then absolutely it's an avenue you should go down. As I was saying, I think Ireland are very light in midfield. I think that's our big problem in this squad, and I don't necessarily see how Heimir Hallgrímsson can fix that easily or quickly. You even look at this squad. We talked about Andy Moran earlier and the possibility that he might get minutes. It's slim pickings, really. I know Finn Azaz is in good form for Middlesbrough, but when he played in the last window, it wasn't fantastic. It was a little bit underwhelming from the way I saw it. Josh Cullen is someone that I think can do so much more for Ireland. He's been around the camps now, or around the squad for for years, and he's very much in that stalwart kind of bracket of player. But I don't see him imposing himself on games to the extent that he needs to in this Ireland team. We spent so much time talking about the attacking options. We spent so much time talking about centre back and wing back and all this kind of stuff, and the goalkeepers we've talked about ad nauseum. But in midfield, we just have so little, and perhaps that's why we don't talk about it enough. The options there are just really, really slight, and that's not something that Heimer Hallgrímsson can fix with a magic wand. But I've seen little, I suppose, little chinks of light in those 4 games so far. Obviously, the win against Finland was impressive, and I think mentally it would have done a lot for the squad just to show that they actually can win a game and come from a place of adversity inside a match to win. But look, it's going to be a long process, Raf. I don't think anyone thought that when he was appointed that this would be something that would be a transformative thing for Ireland in a quick period of time. So again, it's just take one game at a time and we'll see.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say anyway. So look, just a reminder there, Ireland versus Finland, it is on Thursday live across RTÉ platforms, TV, radio and online. And the same for Sunday when the opposition is England at Wembley. But that is it for this week's podcast. We'll be back next Monday to review the international window. And thanks very much to Barry Landy, Barry Murphy and Keith Treacy for coming on this week.